Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem.
All right, Nico, nice to meet you again. Thank you very much for joining. This is the latest episode of the Week in Italian Startup, where we review the most important news or at least what is interesting to us in terms of the startup world. And we go through in details and see if also the audience has something to add to it. So all these sessions are based on Niccolò owns a newsletter where he collects the best news. So please check it out. And let's get started. Oh yeah, these episodes, by the way, are live here on Clubhouse, but are also available on Spotify and on YouTube. So after my marketing pitch, then we can start with the news.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jack. Thank you for hosting. Happy to be back. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's start with the money. Okay, so Heroes. Tell us about Heroes. Very interesting play, but I have some comments on that.
Yeah. Well, the news is that Heroes is a London and Berlin-based startup. With a business model basically is to acquire brands operating on Amazon and support their growth. So it's a platform play in a sense. And the company is in our conversation because the founders are of Italian origin. I'm not sure whether they are all actually born in Italy, but there are three brothers. Riccardo, Alessio, and Giancarlo, I believe, and they just raised $200 million. Funny thing is that another company based in London doing exactly the same business announced $165 million of new money on exactly the same day.
So interesting. What I found particularly crazy though, I'm checking now the TechCrunch article about how the raise was structured. So essentially behind it is a company called Craighill Capital Management. And essentially this round, from my understanding, is not equity, but it's more on a sort of like credit sort of style financing. So these guys at Craighill in New York are specialized in this kind of deals where they basically provide finance for asset-backed businesses. So in this case, essentially, the raise is huge, but we need to be precise. So in this specific case, it looks like at least is more of a PE kind of play, if you will. Not even private equity, but more of a, I would say, I don't know how even called. They call themselves essentially like, sort of boutique financial solutions. So these guys essentially are raising capital and making a structured loan in a certain sense. And the idea is that Heroes actually started like with 68 million, I believe, on a same format. So from this kind of like alternative financing, it's very, very interesting actually. So
yeah, you're right. So that's cool. But basically, if you think about it, it makes sense because that money is not about, strictly speaking, I don't know, market development or product development. It's about acquiring existing businesses, creating a platform, adding all of these new brands and supporting them in their growth.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's possible. That's not purely equity. That's something more nuanced than pure equity.
And I feel is way less risky than a traditional venture capital investment, because actually these guys are buying like cash flowing businesses, and they essentially need the money for the so-called roll up play. Where essentially they pull together a bunch of FBA shops in one big entity that essentially generates insane amount of cash. So this is something definitely like interesting to see, and to see how exactly they're gonna merge essentially and pull everything together.
And the growth speed of this type of business is crazy, because if you think about it, they raised 65 million like 1 year ago, and they started like 2 years ago. And now they're opening a new credit line for $200 million.
Very interesting. All right. Not too bad at all. Let's switch completely topic to talking about mattresses. And this is a startup that has been like booming in the US. We're talking about 8 Sleep. Basically, it's an interesting play because they're trying to rethink mattresses, and they're doing it from two sides. One is kind of the biohacking, and the other side is the fitness. So they're trying to combine the two and claiming that sleep is an essential part of fitness, and their product is something that enhances performance and therefore fitness and health and so on and so forth. Great product. I've seen like a lot of like US based big internet celebrity endorsing the product, and is pretty much all across US. And the founder is Italian. You told me, I didn't know. It was very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the reason why we are talking about 8 Sleep. So Matteo Franceschetti is the founder and the CEO, and they just raised $86 million. And as you said, it is a completely different approach to smart analytics for your body, and actually also supporting you in living a better life. Yeah, because that's the basic ideas.
Yeah.
And I have to say, they also make a great communication about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They're very good at presenting the products and discussing the products. So it's very well positioned. Unfortunately, they're only selling it in the US.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The last time I checked, yes.
So interesting. Crazy.
So I'm looking forward to having them selling in Europe.
Awesome. What I was impressed by is the pool of great investors that are part of the round. So these are the basically the rock star of the US VC. Well, starting from SoftBank, which it's a beast in itself. Khosla Ventures is there, Founders Fund and General Catalyst. So definitely some of the biggest player in the US VC space. So great validation from the investment community for sure.
Yep, congratulations for the round, because very, very nice, very good.
Very cool. All right, moving on. So let's go back to London/Turin, where Newcleo essentially announced 118 million funding. And it's a company that is led pretty much by Stefano Buono, one of a big personality in the Turin startup ecosystem. Basically, the guy I met the guy in Turin because when I was working with the Club degli Investitori, and the guy is like a rock star as well. I worked with Nobel laureate Carlo Rubbia in the CERN, and then essentially founded his own like startup doing nuclear. It's tough for me. I'm not a physicist. I don't know exactly the details, but essentially they're helping the treatment of tumors through nuclear therapy. And then the company went public and then sold to Novartis for an incredible exit. So the guy now is essentially doing 3 things, to my understanding, and this is the third one, which I was not aware about, but I knew about essentially his family office, which is really, really active in the sustainability space. So definitely very big impulse in the impact investing world. The second is the LIFFT accelerator, which is also done together with the Compagnia di San Paolo. And then this third thing is Newcleo. So definitely something incredible that this guy has been pulling off. So impressive. I'm very, very impressed. Yeah.
Well, you said it too. Actually, I've never met Stefano, but I trust your word. And looking from his curriculum, he's a very great guy. And Newcleo is a newly founded company, and is actually contrarian. This is very contrarian because it is developing nuclear energy based on energy infrastructure based on nuclear energy. This is quite contrarian, I would say, because this is not something that's mainstream. Public opinion in Europe, at least, is not really in favor of nuclear.
No, totally.
But still, there are many commentators. I know nothing about nuclear energy, but there are many commentators that actually are saying that probably is one of the few ways to carbon neutrality.
Oh wow, so interesting.
And
yeah, there has been a little bit of a stigma against nuclear, and it's gone on forever. So this guy take on the small and simple task of rethinking nuclear energy. So it's incredible to me. It's like really like a kind of SpaceX, kind of incredible in a way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it is also interesting that they want to base their technology on things that already exist. So they're going to acquire existing companies having existing technology that they believe that combining can provide safe, green, and usable nuclear energy.
Awesome.
I'm really looking forward to see how this goes. Also because, I mean, Italy, for example, voted against having nuclear energy centrals. So I don't know whether, and the direction in Europe is more or less the same. So about dismantling the existing infrastructure. So I'm curious about the market acceptance of this new technology. How will it go?
Very interesting. It will be very cool to see like how it develops for sure. Very, very cool. All right, let's jump to Asia with the Hong Kong-based startup Know Your Customer. This is a startup that is in the literal like KYC space, and it's the startup has the same name as the vertical. Essentially, it's a company developing tools to essentially have a better analytics and data point in order to gather information about customers in general. Then the parallel thing is the KYB, which is companies doing the same thing but for businesses. And we have a big player in the credit and business information sector, CRIF. So I didn't know CRIF directly. I knew about the sector. I never took a particular interest into that, but I'm curious to see how you feel about it and why you feel it's particularly interesting.
Starting from CRIF is a multinational. One of those companies that you don't know about, but they're basically deciding your life, because CRIF is probably one of the 2 or 3 credit providers in Italy and one of the biggest in Europe. So they know whether you're bad at your credit, and they've been investing in startups quite a bit in the latest years. And the fact that they are investing in this type of company, an Hong Kong company doing Know Your Customer, says a lot about where they see the market going. So in the direction of automating, of implementing technology in order to complete processes that probably today are more manual or more scattered and fragmented than the potential future.
Very cool.
So it's cool and interesting, because in fact it is in a way modifying the business model of CRIF. So this is a way of defending your moat.
I thought it was more sort of a strategy in order to acquire more data points. But so why do you think is kind of changing a little bit the structure? Is it because of the automation, because of the algos running for credit checks and data points that they can then elaborate?
Well, I see a lot of investment and startups in the KYC area, and they're taking nimble approaches to it. So when the incumbent has an existing infrastructure that, of course you have a data advantage, but still you've been around for quite a few decades right now. So nimble competitors might, in a sense, create a problem for you. So definitely, CRIF is diversifying, investing in potential competitors and in additional markets. I think it's quite interesting, and I think it's a way of extending their moat and making it more concrete in a sense.
Makes sense. Fantastic. All right, let's talk about liquidity. All right, Evolvere basically a company owned by Eni. We've talked extensively how Eni and other energy companies are essentially doing a great job in getting involved with startups. So that's the nth example of it. So if you maybe tell us more about Evolvere and My Solar Family. So that's an acquisition play.
Yes, that's one of the usual small acquisitions that we see in Italy, because we don't know the price, which was undisclosed. And actually, Evolvere was already a shareholder in the target. Anyhow, Evolvere is a controlled company of Eni, operating in the renewables energy sector, and it's basically, the way I understand it, it's a company offering to manage your photovoltaic implant as a service. So it provides you with all the infrastructure in order to manage photovoltaic panels, photovoltaic system.
Wow.
Probably also at the consumer level. Actually, probably the prosumer is the correct way to describe the market. And the company they acquired is actually a sort of community of people managing, owning photovoltaic panels. I believe comprising 80,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a big one. And it helps. It helps the community in managing the implant, in knowing the consumption, the energy production. It's a data company, I would say.
I see.
Socialite data company, the way I understand it, of course.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, in Italy, we had the crazy of the solar panel a few years ago with all the incentive, which, by the way, are still up. So yeah, this is a great.
But they're fading away.
They're fading away. Yeah, no, for sure. But it generated a little bit of people with some solar panel. They don't know much how to handle those. So this is a great play on a crowd which is really sensitive to this. So yeah, very cool. I would move on then to the German company Remira acquired Kyklos Group. So here we talk about fashion and management of supply chain. So let's talk maybe a little bit about Remira. So my understanding is that Remira is a software solution for supply chain in general. Kyklos does the same exact thing, but for the fashion industry. So the management of retailers, the management of supplier, etc. So big acquisition for sure, a verticalized strategy. So not just to try to cater a specific set of businesses. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Interesting strategy for sure.
Well, I wouldn't say that Kyklos is exactly a startup, because from the information I could find, the company was probably founded around 2003. And I found some information about the revenues that are short of 5 million euros last year.
I see.
So like a relatively small to medium software company focused on the vertical that you told about, the fashion vertical. On the other side, the interesting fact about this operation is that Remira is owned by Evalston, a sort of private equity group, and this is the third acquisition they performed this year. So the fund is investing with Remira in order to create, and again, we see a lot of them, a platform play to enter new markets and expand the Remira, acquiring competitors and similar companies across Europe at least.
Super interesting. Awesome. All right, moving on back to life sciences with one of the Innogest portfolio company, Renovacor. going public through a SPAC. So second SPAC that we talk about in these episodes. Same kind of structure, pipe structure. So again, we have some private allocation before the IPO. A good raise over here, and it's becoming popular for sure. It's something that is becoming like more and more popular.
Well, you know that we are at least in the US, we are in full SPAC craze. Yep. Actually, as we spoke last time about the problem with redemption of shares and LBs, it seems from reading here and there, it seems that more and more SPACs are seeing a lot of redemption. So investors actually voting yes to a SPAC merger, and then asking for the money back. So that's kind of interesting.
Wow.
But again, in this case, the operation went through, and Renovacor is getting listed by combining with this SPAC Chardan Healthcare acquisition to Corp.
Perfect.
I don't know much, of course, about the business, but Renovacor is operating in the cardiovascular disease, I believe. The raise was $95.1 million, as you said, with a 30 million pipe on the side. From what I found, the SPAC had raised $85 million. So it seems that more or less 20 million of the money raised by the SPAC originally was given back to the shareholders. So they asked for their money back.
Interesting. Interesting trend for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's not the first time. We'll see the next one. What's going to happen then? That's definitely
good for Innogest anyhow.
Of course. They're out. They made their share. Happy people. All right. We are going to conclude with an interesting fact about, which is the first time that I hear about. So essentially, you pointed out how a law firm, LCA, essentially started their own SRL, so it's an LLC essentially, doing venture investments. So probably the partners are the same partner as the law firms, and now they are essentially using a vehicle from the law firm to actually do venture capital investments. So that's a very interesting way to diversify. And to be honest with you, I was expecting like investments in legal tech, but the first investment they made is in agri-food. So for me it was like, okay, cool. It's a good diversification. Maybe they should go back to legal tech, but it's an interesting way to think about diversifying a business for sure.
Yeah, well, so that news was interesting to me as well. Of course, I saw the investment vehicle they set up as a sort of, I don't know, pension fund for partners of the law firm.
Okay.
I don't know, but that's the
makes sense.
The mental image that I made in my mind about this vehicle, which makes sense. I mean, again, my mental image is about lawyers seeing a lot of venture capital deals because, I mean, they're an important part of every investment. And you see all of these people investing money here and there in startups. So that it was all about a matter of time before they decided to come together and set up a vehicle making their own investments in the market. So
no, for sure. They are in a privileged...
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, actually, as you point out, they're in a very privileged position where they see like a lot of deals and they really analyze with a certain technical depth all the minutiae of contracts and evaluations and so on and so forth. So they're in a perfect position to essentially, take some shots into the VC space. I absolutely agree with you. Very cool.
And they probably see, I don't know, but there are probably firms that see more deals than the average VC. In the case they have more data points
Good point.
Hands-on data point at the average VC. Again, I have no data about this, but that's a sensation I have. So that's
how do you think like a company like this is perceived by sort of the veteran of the VC industry? So this is a new guy essentially walking into the market, and how traditional VCs like Primo maybe would feel about this. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. So I mean, the way I see it, this is basically an angel club. So it's not different than an angel club, right?
I agree.
It is just a coincidence that they are all lawyers from the same firm. But that's absolutely someone you would co-invest with or work with because they are in your pipeline. So
awesome.
I mean, I don't see any particular issue with that.
Awesome. Acceptance. Italy is still very open to accept, the new guys on the block. That's a good thing.
Well, of course. I mean, we have all been there. So we have all been the new guys on the block. I feel like I am still one. So
good. The beginner's mindset. That's good. That's a good thing.
Yep. Always be learning.
Right.
Always be learning.
Nico, thank you so much for joining. Again, this is the Week in Italian Startup. Episodes are available on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you guys want to follow us on different platforms, we are there. So thank you very much for joining.